At just 5 years old, adorable Kayla, with a heart as big as her imagination, believed she had found a family of abandoned bunnies in her backyard. Filled with pride and compassion, she carefully took them to the vet, eager to see them recover. However, when the vet took a closer look at the little animals, his face instantly paled, and he took a step back, totally stunned. But before we start our story, smash the like button. Make sure to subscribe and hit the notifications bell so you won't miss any new stories. Kayla and her mother could see in the vet's expression that something had changed as soon as he looked at the chicks. Without saying a word, he hurried over to the computer, looking for some information. Mother and daughter stood in suspense, waiting for an explanation. But what followed was something they would never have imagined. The vet suddenly fainted and fell to the floor, leaving them completely perplexed. With the help of a doctor who happened to be in the waiting room, they managed to bring the vet back to his senses. Kayla and her mother, still full of curiosity about what the vet had discovered, waited for an explanation, but he seemed completely out of it. Without wasting any time, he started shouting at his assistant, ordering her to call animal control immediately. It was only when a man in a suit arrived to collect the animals that Kayla and her mother finally discovered what she had actually found in their yard. Both were incredulous, unable to understand how these creatures could have appeared there. The mystery was in the air. What were these creatures? How did they get there? And why had the vet suddenly fainted while examining them? The suspense was about to be revealed, but the answers were still far from being understood. Kayla knew something was moving in the bushes, and as she pushed aside the leaves, she came across the sight of 6 small creatures, which she initially thought were furless bunnies, huddled together for warmth. In the middle of winter, these poor creatures must have been freezing. Without wasting any time, Kayla quickly took off her coat and put it over them, feeling a mixture of compassion and urgency as she tried to decide what to do next. Kayla knew that those animals needed help, and she wanted nothing more than to offer it. However, she remembered the words of her parents, who had always been clear that they didn't want pets or any other animals in the house. Perhaps, in this case, she could convince her parents to make an exception, but Kayla didn't want to risk it. If they didn't change their minds, those creatures would once again be exposed to the cold and loneliness. Then Kayla made a decision. If she wanted to help those poor bunnies, she would have to do it in secret. She looked back at her house through the bushes. She knew that her father, Sebastian, wouldn't be home from work for another 2 hours, and her mother, Erica, was busy in the kitchen preparing dinner. This was her best chance to act without being discovered, and Kayla knew she couldn't miss it. Kayla couldn't wait to get those animals into her warm bed where she could plan what to do next. In a hurry, she grabbed her coat and began carefully stowing the 6 bunnies in her pockets. They were heavier than she had imagined, and, to her surprise, they didn't hop around as rabbits usually do. They became quieter, as if they knew they needed help, which made Kayla even more determined to keep them safe. However, Kayla also realized something strange. She had never seen bald rabbits before. Something seemed wrong with those cubs, or perhaps they were from a breed of rabbit she had never heard of. But in any case, she couldn't help but help. With her coat now weighing considerably, each bunny carefully tucked away, Kayla began to make her way into the house, determined to give them the protection and care they needed. To get to her room, Kayla had to climb the stairs and pass through the kitchen, which was her biggest obstacle. Sneaking into the kitchen, she saw her mother, Erica, totally focused on cutting up some vegetables. Taking advantage of the distraction, Kayla quickly passed through the opening and, only after crossing the kitchen, casually said, "I'm going to play in my room." Her heart was racing, but she knew she was getting closer to her goal. As soon as she got to her room, Kayla quickly put the bunnies to bed. The poor animals were shivering, and she hoped that the warmth of the sheets would warm them right up. But on closer inspection, she realized that they needed more than just warmth. They needed food and water. Remembering what she knew about bunnies, she realized that lettuce and carrots would be the only thing she could offer. Determined to help them, Kayla sneaked out of the bedroom and back into the kitchen, ready to grab whatever she needed. Kayla's mother couldn't help but raise an eyebrow when her daughter asked for a bottle of water and some healthy snacks, like lettuce and carrots. Never before had she seen Kayla interested in anything other than lemonade and sweaters. Erica was curious about the sudden change in attitude. but she was so focused on dinner that she preferred not to ask. Besides, she couldn't help but feel pleased with her daughter's new behavior and wanted to support this initiative, even without knowing the reason behind it. Kayla went upstairs with all her supplies, smiling with happiness. She thought she was managing to look after those animals perfectly, and everything was going according to plan. But when she presented the food and water to the bald bunnies, she quickly realized that they weren't interested in eating anything. Curious, Kayla approached and inspected them a little more closely, and that's when she understood why. The more Kayla examined those animals, the more she realized that they probably weren't rabbits. They didn't have big teeth, long ears, or strong hind legs. Little by little, Kayla became convinced that she was dealing with some kind of baby animal, but she had no idea exactly what species it was. Feeling overwhelmed, Kayla turned to the one person she could trust, her mother. With tears in her eyes, she rushed downstairs and began to explain. Though confused at first, Erica began to understand Kayla's unusual behavior. Her daughter's final plea was clear. She needed help to take the creatures to the vet. They quickly gathered what was needed: a box, a blanket, and the resolve to face whatever awaited. In that moment, the bond between them deepened, rooted in shared compassion. They arrived at the clinic with the creatures still wrapped in the blanket. Erica helped Kayla carry the box, both of them filled with nervous energy. At the front desk, Erica's voice was steady. "We have an emergency." The staff reacted immediately, sensing the urgency. The air was tense with curiosity, and every eye waited to see what would be revealed. The receptionist occasionally glanced over, heightening the mystery. At last, their names were called. The room fell silent, every eye turning to them. Inside the examination room, the veterinarian gently removed the creatures from the box. Kayla and Erica watched in silence as he began to examine them. As he continued, his expression shifted from concentration to confusion. He paused frequently, inspecting the creatures with furrowed brows. Suddenly, the vet stepped back, eyes wide with disbelief. "This is extraordinary," he muttered. Kayla's grip on her mother's hand tightened as a new wave of tension filled the room. The vet turned abruptly, rushing to the computer. He typed rapidly, eyes scanning the screen with urgency. Then, without warning, he paled and collapsed to the floor. Chaos erupted. Nurses rushed in, while Kayla and Erica froze in shock, unable to process what had just happened. As the medical team gathered, Erica instinctively shielded Kayla. A man from the waiting room pushed forward, identifying himself as a doctor. He knelt beside the vet and began checking his pulse, calmly requesting medical supplies. Erica held Kayla close, her eyes locked on the unfolding scene. The doctor and nurses worked quickly. "We have to get him conscious," the doctor said under his breath. Erica stood frozen, helpless, while Kayla buried her face in her mother's shoulder, unable to watch. Finally, the vet stirred. A faint groan escaped his lips as his eyes opened, bewildered by the faces staring down at him. "What happened?" he asked, struggling to sit up. Relief swept through the room, but his confusion only deepened the sense that something far greater was still unfolding. Kayla and Erica stood beside the recovering vet, minds racing with unanswered questions. "What did you see? What's happening to them?" Erica asked. The vet, still dazed, looked at the box with a troubled expression but said nothing. The answers they needed remained elusive, deepening the tension that filled the room. When he finally spoke, his words shocked everyone. "Call animal control now," he said, his voice shaking. Kayla's face turned pale, and Erica's brow furrowed in confusion. Why such urgency? The vet's insistence hinted at something far more serious than they had imagined. As they waited for animal control to arrive, the air grew heavier with each passing second. Kayla and Erica sat close, hands tightly clasped. The vet, now seated and visibly shaken, finally admitted, "I've never seen anything like them." His voice trembled as he spoke, and the weight of his words only deepened the room's unease. "We must be extremely careful," the vet warned. His grave tone silenced the room. Animal control arrived, swiftly, 2 officers in uniform, carrying equipment that only heightened the tension. The vet and officers spoke in hushed tones, their conversation filled with urgency. Though their words were hard to catch, their expressions said everything. "Mom, what's going to happen to them?" Kayla whispered. Erica, lacking answers, held her close, trying to shield her from the fear that surrounded them. As the animal control officers began their inspection, the room fell into a heavy silence, all eyes fixed on the scene unfolding. The officers worked with calm precision, examining every detail of the creatures. Then one officer turned to them with a stunned expression. "These aren't bunnies," he said. "They're baby capybaras, extremely rare." The room burst into murmurs of surprise. Kayla stood frozen, her assumptions shattered. Relief washed over Kayla, at least they weren't dangerous, but concern soon replaced it. "What happens now?" Erica asked. The officer assured them the capybaras would be cared for, though the uncertainty of their fate remained. An animal control agent joined the conversation, his tone grave. "They were likely brought here illegally," he explained. The weight of this new information settled on the room. Attention shifted fully to the well-being of the baby capybaras. "They'll be taken to a rehabilitation center," the officer said. Kayla looked up, eyes shining with resolve. "We want to help," she declared. In the weeks that followed, Kayla and Erica visited the rehabilitation center regularly. They watched the capybaras grow stronger and healthier, each visit reinforcing their bond with the animals and with each other. What began as a strange backyard discovery had transformed into a meaningful mission. Together, they had made a difference, and the experience became a cherished chapter in their lives.